Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 10th to 16th, which was also the Queer Lit Readathon, which I co-hosted with my friend Rogan. This week I read 6 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who participated in Queer Lit Readathon, and thank you so much to Rogan for coming up with the idea and saying, hey, wanna do this with me? Because I had a blast. First this week I finished Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kahn. This book is absolute goals when it comes to romance and being adorable. Alice has recently been dumped by her girlfriend because Alice just isn't that into sex. She knows she's asexual and biromantic, but she can't bring herself to say that she's ace, and decides that maybe dating just isn't for her. She can live vicariously through the relationship of her 2 best friends who are going to get married soon and who she recently moved in with. Not to mention she has a lot on her plate. Her family is consistently harassing her to declare her major, and she just does not want to study law. Her cute code is officially broken, however, when she meets a new guy while working at the library. She has to decide if they're best suited as close friends or if she wants something more. I adored this book. The characters are interesting and dynamic. The difference between working in a big city library and a rural library seems to be that you get to do all of the types of jobs, which I would actually love to do. This book talks about race, sex, love, expectations, and communication, and I highly recommend that you pick it up if you haven't already. My next read was Far From You by Tess Sharp. This is about a girl who winds up in rehab after the death of her best friend because there are drugs found in her pocket at the crime scene. The problem is she's been clean for more than 6 months and those weren't her drugs. Since the police believe it was a crime motivated by drugs, they're not looking anywhere else for Mina's murderer. And Sophie is trapped in rehab for 3 months trying to figure out why the most important person in her life is dead. What I love about this book is it unpacks information in such a way that it keeps the reader continuously wondering about the different relationships and the truth. We see Sophie relying on stolen medication not only to deal with physical pain, which is the result of a car crash years previous, but also emotional pain in an isolated situation. We also see that she is able to step away from using when confronted with the ramifications of her addiction. Her strength has always come from her love for Mina, and that doesn't stop because she's gone, and she needs to find out why she's gone. After that, I picked up Not Your Villain by C.B. Lee. This is the second in the Not Your Sidekick series, which follows Bells, which is a character we met in the first book. The first 80 pages or so are a wrap-up of what happened in the timeline of the first book, but from Belle's perspective, which was actually really helpful for me because I needed a refresher. By no means can you just skip the first book and get the same impact from reading this book, but I enjoyed seeing how Belle's life ran alongside Jess's. Being the second in a series, I can't really tell you that much about the plot, but I can tell you that Belle's is a delightful trans man in a world where sometimes people get superpowers. There's never been a meta-human in his family tree, but that doesn't mean that there aren't secrets everywhere. One of the things I really enjoyed is that there are a ton of side characters that are pointed out with different sexualities, pronouns, and identities. Belle's dad is also a gem, always making sure Belle's knows he's there to help him with his testosterone injections. And his older brothers and friends love him to bits. Identity isn't treated as something big and scary in this world, it's just another way to get to know somebody. I'm also looking forward to reading the third in this series, Not Your Backup, when it comes out next year. Next, I had myself a slight breather by diving into some graphic novels, so I read Odyssey by Matt Fraction and Christian Ward. This is a retelling of Homer's Odyssey, but in space and gender bent. Although the art was visually stunning and quite a lot to take in, I just don't think that epics are a genre that I particularly enjoy. If there are too many characters and we're not given enough time to get to know them, I lose interest. Regardless, this was packed with the adventure of the original, but the space setting made it compelling and the cast is almost entirely women, which is a rarity in adventure epics. I enjoyed my time with this first volume, but given the genre is not my favorite, I probably won't continue. From one adventure to another, I jumped into Midnighter and Apollo by Steve Orlando. This is a male-male romance between Midnighter, a gritty hero with a fight computer in his brain, and Apollo, a hero who borrows his name from a Greek god. This bind-up has a very specific adventure element to it that would spoil the first issue if I were to tell you what it was. But what I can say is it was great to see a classically macho genre of book have characters that were so accepting of this pairing. Midnighter and Apollo clearly love each other and would do anything for each other, which shows in their intentions and also the power of the art. To finish out this week, where my eyeballs already hated me because of allergies and then hated me more because I just wouldn't let them stop reading, I finished Lizard Radio by Pat Schmatz. This one was weird, so bear with me while I try to explain it. It takes place in a society where children are tested for gender markers and made to comply with the male-female binary. If you score a 1 to 47, you are female. If you score a 48 to 100, you are male. If you are wrongly identified at birth, you are made to transition. However, if you fall within the 5% in the middle, you are made to decide one way or the other by your 10th birthday. And you have to stick with it. Our protagonist, Cavalli, is what we might call non-binary, but what they call a bender. Unfortunately, if a person cannot show gender compliance by the age of 18, they are sent to Blight, a city that is walled off and basically is where all the riffraff of society goes. At age 15, she is sent to a work camp, which is a way that the government tries to make people comply with gender standards. And there she finds out that not only is she a bender, she might also be a samer, which is what we would call a homosexual. This, as you might expect from this rather bleak society, is also a big no-no. This book made everyone and every situation feel trapped. Showing your true self was near impossible with the constant surveillance and policing. But then there were these added fantasy elements that really kept the reader off balance. There were no easy solutions, which made this a very unpredictable tale. This week, Tuesday Night Dinner Club finished the 2nd season of Survivor and then moved on to the 4th season of Survivor because the first 3 episodes of the 3rd season are missing. It's fun to see my friends light up when they remember a specific contestant from a season, and in this case, it's Boston Rob. We are still early in the season, so these new contestants have not quite seeped into my consciousness. But I'm intrigued to continue living vicariously through Proops because he has one of the coolest jobs in the world. I finished all of my reading more than a day before the end of the readathon, and by crazy random happenstance, Queer Eye Season 2 came out, so I definitely watched every single episode. I mean, this poster is an indication of how many tears I shed. I love that the format of the reboot means that all of their clients don't have to be straight guys, which means in this season we got Tammy and Skylar. And both of these episodes, among others, made me bawl my eyes out. Since I had a little more time this week and apparently hadn't cried enough, I rewatched Love, Simon. My feelings for this movie are largely unchanged, unlike aspects of the book. I adored it and it made my heart happy, but there are still aspects of the adaptation that irk me. Martin's inability to pronounce Vilkemen bothered me more the second time around. And Cabaret is still a weird choice given no high school in Georgia, let alone most of North America, unless it is a super liberal performing arts high school, would get to do this show. If they'd chosen to include what happens in that show as a discussion on homosexuality, that would have made sense, but nope, so nope. Also, the changes in this movie make it almost impossible to do an adaptation of Leah on the Offbeat with the same cast unless you changed a lot of things, which makes me a little sad. Overall, I enjoyed this film as a film and the progression of trying to figure out Blue's identity. This week, I listened to American Kingpin by Nick Bolton. This book was recommended to me by Dylan Marin when I ran into him at PodCon, and given that this week is VidCon and I could possibly run into him again, I wanted to get it read. If our paths cross again, I am asking for another recommendation because this book was phenomenal. Silk Road was a libertarian website set up with Tor and Bitcoin that made it possible to buy and sell any drug under the sun. In addition, the website also trafficked in poisons, weapons, and possibly human organs. The site was created and run by a 20-something named Ross, and by the time he was 30, it was worth billions. In case I am being unclear, this is nonfiction. This actually happened. The style of writing in this book is classified as narrative nonfiction, which is just my favorite. It really lends itself to bringing clarity to criminal cases. An immense amount of research went into making this book happen, including looking up weather records so the author could get as close to the ambiance of what happened as possible without having been there. I was incredibly fascinated the entire way through this book, just trying to see if any little slip up would lead to Ross's capture. If you enjoy true crime or want to learn a whole lot about the dark web or want to immerse yourself in a reality that I assume is nothing like your own, pick up this book. That's it for this week. I will not read nearly as much for the next wrap-up because I will be at VidCon, so look out for some videos from that. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down in the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!